Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is David and I'm known as Unity Freedom on the Internet. So today's topic is higher mindfulness, and it is the seventh step in Buddha's Eightfold Path. So without further ado, I'll come back and talk more about higher mindfulness after this short introduction. Hi, welcome back. So, what is mindfulness? Now consider the word mindfulness. What is your mind full of right now? What is your mind full of right now? Probably full of a lot of things that you picked up or you were told when you were young. And when you become an adult, you were told some more things that you pick up and you put inside your mind. So today I will talk about my experiences and how I come to realize the stuff that are in my mind are basically standards, or basically human standards that I have to abide by so I don't make people upset. You know, you have to behave a certain way. Especially me as an Asian, in an Asian culture, we have certain standards we have to abide by. And so I'll talk about those standards from my perspective. So as an Asian, when I was young, when I was brought up by my parents, Asian parents, I basically was told that as a Chinese, one of the most crucial aspects of being Chinese is that whatever you do, save face. Whatever you do, you need to save face. Your face, my face. So I was brought up that way. And of course, the first thing I was brought up to save face is my father. Now, I'm not here to blame my father for what he did to me. I understood now why he did to me, because he was in the duality consciousness. He could only see right and wrong, black and white, and what he was programmed by his father, by my grandfather, and my great-grandfather before my grandfather. And so it was in Asia that my father, who came to help my grandfather to run a business. And this country is a corrupt country, so you need to bribe officials. So there are a lot of corruption in this country. And in order to survive, to run a business, you have to pay off some officials, government officials. And for my dad, it's really no different than other business people. And of course, my grandfather knows about this, and he pays off the bribe, whatever bribe they want, how much it is, in order to keep the business running. To him, it's just a cost of business. Today, we call it extortion, but to my grandfather, it's not really extortion, it's just a way of doing business. It's been how we've been conditioned in that particular country that you have to pay a bribe. Corruption is the norm. It has to be that way. It's the standard. It's how we were brought up. It's how the society functions, how society, for a certain group of people like we are. I mean, I came from a wealthy family, and the wealth came actually from bribing government officials in order to have our business or run our business, which is quite a lucrative textile business. And so when my dad came into the business, he was asked to come into the business because he saw himself as a new father with two children and a wife. And my dad initially lived in another Asian country, and he pretty much worked as a salaryman, but he realized that he couldn't afford to raise the two kids and a wife on a single income by simply working for a company. So he needed a way to generate more income legally. And he was basically working his butts off, 2 jobs, 3 jobs. He would work on his regular job as a technician, as a textile technician. And he would, on the weekends, he would go out and buy stuff and then would resell it on other Asian markets. He was basically like running a little mini Amazon. Whatever people like on the other Asian countries they couldn't get, that he could get, he would buy all these things pretty cheap and then sell them on the market. And they would ask pilots, flight attendants to help them carry the stuff back to their own country, and they obviously get a cut. And of course, my dad would make a lot of money. It was pretty good money. You know, he was really a genius. He was running a little mini Amazon. He's got a little catalog. Whatever you like. You want to buy? Well, I have something for you that your country doesn't have. But my grandfather at the time, he went and visited my dad, and he saw he was working like sweating, you know, here and there, driving here and there, pick up supplies, and then shipping off the goods. My dad's warehouse is our home. We basically literally like a little warehouse. And well, I remember when I was young, I was like tripping over boxes of stuff, basically because my dad needs to store these stuff so he can ship it off. And my grandfather saw my dad, and he was like, no, this is not the way you raise a family, you know, with 3 income. Why don't you come and work for me? Since you are, you know, part of the family, you're going to inherit the business anyways. Why don't you come work for me? My grandfather asked my dad. So my dad says, okay, you know, it's probably better because 1 job, a house, you know, so I can spend my time with my son and daughter. So he agreed. So we went to work to where my grandfather lives, and this country is a little different because it's basically, you can consider a 3rd world country. It's the country as we now know, as Indonesia. And we came from Hong Kong. So it's two different ways of doing business. And one is a British colony at the time, and the other is kind of quasi-dictatorship. But the only way, my father didn't know how the business works. I mean, he's kind of like a small business person himself. But he was brought up in doing business the British way. So he thought, okay, it's going to be the same as as in Indonesia. So my parents went to Indonesia to work with my grandfather, and as he began working in the business, he realized something was not quite right. The way they do business is through bribes, corruption, which was basically not what he was expecting. But he realized that he needed the money. He needed to raise a family. And it seems like the society seemed to accept bribes, corruption as the norm. So he went along. So he took that standard because he had to survive. Can't run a business with the honesty that you expect from a first world country. So he had to change. He has to adapt. He has to take on a certain standard. And as he took on a certain standard, his behavior also changed as well. He becomes a bit more deceptive, a bit more narcissistic, because that's how, again, you have to behave in that particular country. You have to be aggressive, vicious, a go-getter. You have to make money. You can't be like nice and kind and honest. But one of the things he didn't really appreciate is paying bribes to officials. So he was trying to avoid doing that. But one day, the officials came to his house. And one of the things he told me was that, David, just lie to them. I'm not home. Lie to them that I'm not home. So just do that, and they'll just leave. But of course, when the official came, they manipulated me because I was a little kid. I didn't know anything. I was like innocent and young, and they kind of manipulated me into saying, "Where's your dad?" And I told them, "Oh, my dad, he's in the attic. He's hiding in the attic." So they went and grabbed him, and then detained him in the office, in the police office. They were police officers, but they were looking for bribes so that you can run your business successfully and peacefully. And so he was somewhat traumatized. It was later on when we had a chat together that he was somewhat traumatized from that experience. Because like 4 police officers were just harassing him, mentally abusing him, and finally he caved in and he said, "Okay, fine, I'll pay the bribe." But on the act of rage and fear, when he came back from the police office, he came and took me in the room and he blamed me. I remember he used a rattan stick and he beat me out of anger because I told the truth about where he was. And of course, he said, "It was your fault. You told the truth. I got caught. I was in the office." He didn't say he was abused, but he was angry enough to use a stick to punish me. And he told me, "You cannot survive in this world by telling the truth. You have to lie You want to make lots of money? You have to lie about it. You have to keep lying. People don't care about the truth. They just want to hear what they want to hear. See, they want to hear what they want to hear. Because that's what they want to hear. And you just lie so that they want to hear what they want to hear. It was a kind of a dramatic change. It was a gradual change, but I remember my dad wasn't like that. He and my mom were always telling me, always tell the truth. You want to survive in this business, you have to tell the truth. Just be honest, and you will have a successful business. You will have a good time making money because people trust you. But when he went to Indonesia, things changed. He changed from being honest and truthful to being deceitful and not telling the truth. And even today, there's this inkling that small inkling of the residual mindset that even I caught him, oh, you said this, you made a mistake. And he said, no, I didn't make a mistake. It's not a mistake, it's something else. So there's still that sense of denial in his mind, even though he realized later on that, oh yeah, I told a lie. But you see, a certain condition can be imposed upon you without you knowing, and once you take it on and put it in your mind, you act on those things, and then you become what's in your mind without you realizing it. Of course, until later on, you are awakened and you become enlightened to realize that these things are not true. These are illusions. These are untrue. They are born from the sense of separation. But I'll talk about that later on. But in the meantime, my dad decided that I need to lie. And it was that punishment later on that I remember that I too started to lie. This is quite shocking because I refuse to lie because I find that, I don't know, inside of myself, I always have this desire to tell the truth. I see something, it's like the child that see the king or the emperor has no clothes, and I will point it out that you have no clothes, you're not telling the truth. And was that my desire? And I always get myself in trouble when I was in grade school in Asia when I point out certain things to my teacher about what the teacher was saying that's not the truth. And I remember almost every time I did that, you know how in Asia, when you don't follow the team, you don't follow the rules, even though you're not, you didn't make any mistake, you face punishment. I remember several times I had to write on the board that I shall listen to my teacher, I shall listen to my teacher. Hundreds of times I would write on the chalkboard for everyone to see. You see, this is David. He ignored or violated the rules. Now, if anyone who wants to have self-independent thoughts, you will face the same punishment as David. And that was the school that I went to. I remember one time I had to stand outside, putting a sign like this and saying that I should not express my own opinion. So it was that kind of, I would call it brainwashing. Gradually, slowly, then I took on these ideas that, oh, maybe I shouldn't say anything. Maybe I should keep myself quiet. And so over the years, I continue to lie. Of course, lying has certain benefits. You can actually lie to people. People don't know you. You present a really nice, kind, and trustworthy face, and they trust you. And then you take advantage of them by lying to them. And then when they realize you lied to them, then you develop this sense of defense and say, I don't need to take responsibility. I already made the money. And at the time for almost close to 3 decades, I worked in a company where I made a lot of sales, where money was important to me. And I equate making lots of money to being manipulative, deceitful, and so forth. And some people call me passive aggressive. But I didn't see anything wrong with that. But I do see something odd when I change my perspective from being honest to being deceitful and manipulative. And one thing I notice is that I attract the friends that I used to be with that are trustworthy and honest. I attract people who are narcissists. Basically, the same kind of people that I would call myself a narcissist. I just manipulate people to get what I want. I feel I need to control people so that they don't show the reactions that makes me feel bad. Kind of like it goes back to reminding me that I don't want to get punished for telling the truth. So I control people so that I don't get punished for telling the truth. So I don't have to tell the truth. I tell a lie, but if people caught me telling a lie, I punish them. I control them so they won't rat out on me or they won't punish me. But it always I had this pressure. I had this sense of pressure in me. Ever since I took on the first lie, I felt this pressure. Before I took on the first lie, I was honest and, I didn't have to lie or anything like that. I was like free. I was pressure free. I was somewhat connected to everything. Because I know that I don't need to tell a lie, because if you tell the truth, you are free. But as soon as I start to tell a lie, this little pressure builds inside of me. I remember the pressure builds up more and more. And I started to develop my muscles started to tighten, my back started to tighten during the teenage years. And then I started to see chiropractors, physiotherapists, and I started to learn all the other healing tools. And I tried so many times to try and discover what's going on. Why am I so nervous? Why am I so defensive? That's the thing. I become so defensive that I have to defend a certain worldview that I have developed after the trauma that I received from my dad. But it's actually not really started from him, but started from many, many, many past lives. It's just that in this life, he reactivated the memory, who I was. Reactivated in the past life, I haven't resolved this particular psychology, which leads to mindfulness. The particular psychology of the duality consciousness, right and wrong, black and white. And of course, in lying, what do you think in your mind? You have something that is the truth, which you define as truth, but it's not the truth in reality. And then you have something that is the false, but it's really the reality of the situation. So you're basically balancing left and right, black and white. So you're in this lying cycle loop, and I couldn't go any further than telling the truth about bringing something more ideas, more creativity. Because I remember before then, I was really creative. I was, doing a little bit of painting. I was sculpting. My favorite was sculpting. Little model clays, and I was really good at doing those. But as soon as I had this trauma, then I see things in left and right, black and white. Can't go anything past further than black and white, left and right. And so it was then one day I received a certain insight, a certain experience. And that was the experience that I need to take the next step. I need to pivot my job from being a technician to being a nurse. But that transition means that I have to resolve my desire to lie. And in fact, when I first started that course in nursing, one of the course is psychology. What sort of psychology are you carrying on? Like, what sort of baggage are you carrying? And the counselor, when she was interviewing me, she realized, because I was speaking to her, she realized that, David, you sound like you're just full of shit. And I was like shocked. What do you mean by I talk like everything is just full of shit? And she said, because you was telling me everything I want to hear. You were so clever because probably you work in the business. You listen to people and you listen to what they want to for what they want to hear, and you listen to them, and then you respond in a way that makes them want to hear. It's sort of like an influencer. They make messages to the viewers that they attract. And you want to attract a certain viewer, you make a certain message so they will listen to you. And I was doing that. But the counselor was asking me who I am, who I am truly. Why do I want to be a nurse? Instead, I was giving her a bunch of BS of what you would say, talking points. And she realized you're just repeating certain talking points. It's not coming from you. It's just a bunch of talking points you put in your mind, trying to impress me, trying to convince me that you are qualified to be a nurse. Because she wants to know, are you wanting to be a nurse just because you want to become a nurse in your mind, or you think that you just want to be a nurse and that's it? Or is it coming directly from your heart? And she realized that what I said mostly were just repeated talking points in my mind. It wasn't coming truthfully from me. It was coming from whatever I took on from other sources, the standards that would convince other people that, hey, yeah, I like to be a nurse. Basically, you lie to people and try to convince them, trying to convert them to align with your worldview. And she was smart enough to realize I was trying to convert her to my worldview of what nursing is, because she knows that's not true. That's just talking points that have no basis of reality. And so she asked me, why do you have to do this? Why do you have to lie? Why do you have to lie to me? Because there are certain things I picked up from you that you have a genuine desire to help people, to care for people. But you're just repeating talking points that are not you, that you picked up somewhere else. So she asked me, why did you do this? Why did you have to lie? And of course, I broke down in tears. I was so shameful, I didn't want to tell her why I did lie. But she looked pretty honest and trustworthy. She was kind, but assertive and direct. So I told her, yes, the reason why I lied is because I fear the consequences of what you're going to do to me. Or you're going to write a report that I'm not qualified to be a nurse, that maybe nursing is not the right career for me. Maybe you're going to put a report that David is not qualified to be a nurse. So I was afraid of that. I was afraid of the consequences if I don't lie. And so I had to lie, make up things, or what they call white lies. It's not really a lie, it's just talking points that hopefully convince you that I'm genuinely interested in nursing. And she looked at me and said, that's what I wanted to know. Because I know there's some things that you're telling the truth, but there's many things that you're telling me lies. And then she asked me to tell her more, and I told her that the reason why I had to lie was because I was afraid of consequences, punishment. And it stemmed from my experience with my dad. When I was young, I was punished, I was beaten. And the reason I was beaten because I told the truth to the police officers of where my dad was. And the police officers found him and beat him up. And out of the anger of why he was punished, he punished me. And now both of us have been punished in a way to satisfy a certain standard. So my dad finally capitulated and started to tell a lie in order to run a business, but he had to work with these corrupt officials, government officials, where he had to lie, he had to pay bribes, because if he doesn't, he gets yanked into the police office again and get punished. The same with me. If I don't tell a lie, in my mind, I was afraid that someone is going to beat me up, punish me. I was fearing that in my mind that maybe the nurse, the counselor would punish me. But of course, that's an illusion. It's not true. But it's true in my mind. So again, what is your mind full of? Now you can hear that my mind was full of these things. It changes your perspective of how you look at things. So of course, the counselor helped me, rehabilitate me, and said to me that it's fine. You're not the only one that been traumatized when you were young. She said that I've seen many, many patients that had been traumatized by their parents when they were young. And especially with Asian males, they were taught that they have to align with certain jobs, that they are not allowed to be creative and work what sort of jobs they want. And she said, this job, I know not many Asian males would go and study. And that's why I had to ask you, why did you take this job? And I want you to realize, the counselor told me, that it's okay. You have the right to choose. You don't have to follow any standard. If you want to be a nurse, you just tell me the truth, why you want to be. Not follow some talking points, follow some standards somebody told you to follow. Because if you want to, you go ahead and do. So it was a sort of like a game changer for me to realize what Buddha said about mindfulness. And when I come back, I'll talk more about the concept of mindfulness based on my story. So after sharing my story about why I lied and how the counselor helped me resolve my need of lying, it came to me that before I received the trauma, I was free. I was a little child, I was innocent. I felt innocence, like I like to do a lot of creative works, and I like to basically try new things. I wasn't afraid of doing anything because, well, I don't see any punishment. I don't experience any punishment for doing something different, something new, something I want to do. But it was the moment when my father punished me for telling the truth, because he was also being punished for not paying the bribes. So it led one set of group of people punish my dad for not following a standard of corruption, lying, and deceit. And then my dad then, out of fear, acted that fear upon me, punished me. So I followed the standard that came from where? From the group of people up at the top. Then I took on the standard of lying and deceit, and thinking that that's the only way I could survive. I could make money in this world. The only right way, so I don't upset these kind of people. The people who are in authority. People who are in authority, you have to talk a certain way, you have to behave a certain way so you don't upset them. So that's how I developed this attitude, but developed in the mind. But before I developed this, I was free of these thoughts. So what happened? Well, you know, when Buddha says everyone is the Buddha nature, when you see the Buddha nature in yourself, you see the Buddha nature in everything in life. So if you look at this way in the Buddha perspective, if you're connected to everything, what's the point of lying? You're connected. When you lie to someone, you're lying to yourself. What sense does it make? There's no advantage. If you lie to someone affects someone by me lying, but then eventually it will affect me directly. So that it makes no sense to lie to people, or to hurt people, or to be deceitful to people. So there was something that is causing me to lie incessantly for 30 years before I came about and realized why I did it. It's because I was disconnected from the Buddha nature. I no longer see myself as the Buddha nature. I see myself as a separate being. And when you see yourself as a separate being, there is no connection. And when you see yourself as a separate being, you see others also as a separate being. And as a separate being, because you're not connected, you're all alone, you have to create your own world view of how the world functions, of how people should behave, of how material things should act. So there is no longer a connection between you and the Buddha nature. So you build your own worldview. In fact, roughly 8.2 billion people on Earth today have their own worldview. Roughly 8.2 billion world views. And then guess what? If you're separated, you have to be the king of your own island as well. So you are also the center of the universe, with you being the king sitting on top of that universe. And then you roughly have 8.2 billion people with their own unique universes. So do you see the challenge here? So in order for you to survive in this world, you will suffer. Because now you're not really connected to anyone, and anyone is not connected to you. And each and every one of us have different worldviews, different standards. So what we tend to do is that we don't take the standard from other people. We took them because it's how either we've been traumatized and we've been forced to take these standards, the worldview of other people, so that there's a sense of not willing to be punished. You feel that if you don't abide by the worldviews of other certain groups of people, you might get punished. So you have these built-in programs that it automatically activates as soon as these kind of people appear in your life. Or if you would actually work in certain business that would make you feel safe, because when you're separated, you create this worldview. There's this sense of pressure in you that you need to defend this worldview at any means, any cost possible. Even if it means having to hurt other people, deceive other people, manipulate other people in order to defend your worldview. Sometimes to the extreme of killing other people. Like what you see in Nazi Germany in World War II. They have a certain worldview that they want to defend, and they want to spread out to make it the de facto worldview. They were willing to go to war to make that happen. But of course, when you have this certain worldview, you would want to defend it. And for me, I was defending my worldview. Lying is the only way to survive. Lying is the only way to make money. Lying is the only way I don't need to experience the same trauma that I experienced when I was young. So you have this need to defend, always needing to defend this particular worldview. So what does it mean? So what does it have to do with the Eightfold Path, with mindfulness? When the Buddha created the Eightfold Path, his desire is to allow us to be free of the duality consciousness of right and wrong, good and bad, black and white, or maybe something in between. No, he wants us to be free. He wants us to be free of the duality consciousness of the experience of separation and help reconnect us back to oneness. And how? Well, you have to let go of all the standards that you have taken on. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to let go of all the worldviews, because you need certain worldviews and you need the ego to survive. But if you're basing the worldview on right or wrong, on duality, those things are just going to keep you trapped in the state of suffering. Because when I was suffering, it wasn't outside of me. Because if it's outside of me that causes me to suffer, then it would be the same, would cause the same suffering as my counselor, who's sitting on the opposite of me. My counselor and me would experience the same suffering, but I experienced the suffering. My counselor saw me experiencing the suffering of wanting to tell always lies and repeating talking points. She saw that I was suffering, but she realized it was only in the mind that I keep playing and replaying the same programs again and again. And these programs has characters, has a life of its own. I call them outer selves. They're separate outer selves. They have this behavior, this sense of consciousness, but have no self-awareness. That they can be self-aware that they're doing things that are not in oneness, not in accordance to God. But they're just repeating programs in order, like repeating the same behaviors over and over again, so that I don't have to experience the trauma again. So I can avoid experiencing negativity from the world, from the people. But of course, that's not really what Buddha wants us to do. So what the Buddha wants us to do is to use the Eightfold Path to overcome separation. And one of the steps, the seventh step in the Eightfold Path, is higher mindfulness. That's because what we take on, the standards of other people, cause us to be in that state of separation. So how can you be creative? How can you operate beyond separation when you only see right and wrong, black and white, doing this or that? You cannot see anything else. So you cannot be creative. Part of the mechanism of the Buddha's teaching is non-attachment. It is for us to be non-attached to what we have in our minds, what we take on. Because if you took on certain standards and it's in your mind, it gets projected out into reality to reinforce what you have in your mind. So basically, it's a trap of a loop that you keep playing over and over and over again, unless you could step back and see it, or someone who is not affected by these standards, someone who has not taken the standards, can be sitting next to you, like my counselor, and she was able to see I was struggling. I was not telling the truth because she didn't have the same standards as I took on. So, as you probably notice, that the mind is full of these standards that will cause you to be in that state of separation because you've taken on that sense that, okay, I have to abide by these standards. But if you realize my story and you see where it came from, it was from my dad, who traumatized me by me taking on those standards, those illusions, out of fear. Now, if you were to think, if you were to see the higher teaching of higher mindfulness, what do you need to be mindful of? Yes, in the mind, what you took on, what you put in your mind. But another thing is, you need to be mindful that you don't influence, change other people's worldview. Not using force, manipulation, or trying to convert people. Because there are consequences of that, as you can see. That somebody enforced this standard on me, that I started lying. But what is the highest understanding of mindfulness is that, do we really have a social contract to change other people? Do we really have a contract with God to change other people? This is a question you need to ask. Because what did I ended up with my dad and the situation of lying, of these people then putting me this in, placing standards in my mind, was that in the past life, I did try to convert other people because I believe I was able, is my gift, to see the issues that they are in. I thought, hey, if I convert them to my worldview, they wouldn't struggle. It's probably in the past lives that was the only understanding I could see. I thought, just get them to accept my worldview, then they wouldn't suffer. But of course, it's not that simple. Just taking on someone's worldview will not remove suffering. It will actually add more suffering, because where is suffering happening? It's not outside yourself. It's inside yourself. Whatever you took on, it can cause friction, disagreements with other people. Because if you don't see that you're not a connected being, you're separate, it's not the worldview that I try to convert other people to follow. It is the ability for you to see the Buddha nature first, and then see the Buddha nature in everything. But that's not a review. That is an experience. And so in my next installment, I will talk about higher concentration. Until then, I thank you for spending the time to listen to what I have to say. And I wish you well. Until next time, this is David saying goodbye.